Thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning. Thank you for heading to this session. We are very excited to have Dr. Allison Goedde at BGSU sharing with us about the SAMR model for engaged learning and technology integration. And we're going to turn the presentation over to her. I will keep an eye on the time and on the chat if you have any questions as we're going along. And any other guidance to get us started, Dr. Goedde? All right.
Thank you, Dr. Broder. It's such a great opportunity to be able to present this morning. And I'll introduce myself a little bit more formally, but want to remind everyone this is really a session that's intended for you. And please don't be formal about raising your hand or asking questions. I think between Kate and I, we'll be able to help make this as interactive as possible. And as she introduced, I am Dr. Allison Goedde. I am the Classroom Technology Master's Degree Program Coordinator, as well as a teaching professor in the College of Education Human Development. And my area of focus is classroom technology and integration. And where I currently am on, and we were just talking about our experience this semester. I haven't taught face-to-face now for 2 years. And my strengths really are in online teaching and learning. And I've now moved back and transitioned back into the classroom with face-to-face students. And I presently have the junior level teacher preparation students, the pre-service teachers who are preparing to go into the field for their field work now, mid-semester for 4 weeks. And it was very important to me to measure their growth over the last 2 years, from getting them involved into a reflective thinking practice to think about what tools they've actually been using for tech integration through the COVID spell. And I'm just so excited to share some of that information, as well as introduce you to the way in which I engage the students. These 48 students are in a large active learning lab, and I need to be able to be in tune with them where they are. Their vast experience of technological integration practices has brought to light my ability to be able to engineer the instruction around their needs. And so SAMR is an important element of that. And if you've never heard of this before, I hope that you can really glean a lot of information as we go. An oversight on my part that I recognized this morning, I will be sharing my screen, and I'm going to use one of the modules that we developed aligned with the ISTE standards for students and educators. And it is behind a firewall. And so I can't share the actual module materials. However, the takeaway components are going to be posted in the chat through a URL link. I'm going to prompt Kate along the way if I can't get there myself. I have a few things that you can bring with you and take away. So welcome. Please, again, as interactive as possible and informal, stop me along the way. I tend to get in a vacuum and run away with my own conversation about the topic. So you should be able to see my screen at this point in time. And this is actually pages inside the Canvas shell that I'm currently using with my students. And as I mentioned, it's very important for me to engineer instruction based on their needs. And having so many students in an active learning class, I am not the type of professor who's going to stand in front of a classroom and just talk. Having been through COVID, I recognize that this is the cohort of students in the pre-service teacher preparation program who in the spring of 2020, that was their second semester at BGSU becoming a teacher. So immediately we're using online teaching and learning practices and throwing tools at them and asking them to use these resources ourselves, learning to do them at the same time. And the information that we gathered from them is that, one, yeah, our students at this cohort stage, they are native technology users. And two, do they recognize the uses that they're employing? Do they recognize what they're doing with the tools? This is what brought me to the SAMR model. So a brief introduction about SAMR. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the SAMR model. A couple of you. Great. SAMR stands for Substitution, Augmentation, Modification, and Redefinition. And this is a conceptual framework that was developed to help us understand the ways in which we use technology and the various web tools that engage our students with the ubiquity of computing. Many students are using their mobile devices, they're using their Chromebooks, they're using laptops, and they're just a variety of different tools, and they're multitasking. So we use our time very differently in the classroom. Forget for a moment that through the COVID transition, immediately we were substituting our tools, we were substituting our instruction through technology. And the technology itself became a conduit for our information sharing. So we are instantly in Zoom or Google Meet or Skype. We were engaging with our students using technology. Most of that technology use was to have dialogue, to discuss with each other, to see each other, to have the human side of the computer emerge. And we actually started to do things like hold up paper in front of the computer so we could communicate. And we were probably back channeling with each other through our cell phones. So we were substituting our instructional practices through the use of the computer. I'll keep moving through the augmentation piece and give you a better feel, but this was what the SAMR model actually had been generated in the year 2006. So recognizing how the computer was being used to subsidize instruction was immediately apparent to those of us who were tech integration users. The theoretical framework of SAMR evolved. And I think, and I'm quite certain, at the point of its evolving, never imagined that in 15 to 20 years ahead, we would be revisiting this concept to explain the transformation to online teaching and learning. So I'm going to go into this block of information here. And again, this is just for viewing. I don't have a hyperlink for you to engage yet. But looking at this model and starting in the fourth quadrant to the lower right-hand corner, substitution, students use a digital tool such as Notability to annotate a text. So instead of paper and pencil, we possibly have provided a digital material for students to engage with that they can actually take notes on, or even use like PowerPoint slides. Many of us had been using PowerPoint, and we could download a paper document and give that to students in the classroom and have them take notes on. That would be an example. As we move to the left, you can see the number 3 quadrant, which is augmentation. The augmentation example that is shared here has to do with 5 students working together and giving them a Google Doc. And now they're sharing notes through a Google Doc and collaborating on that set of notes. And possibly get to a point where they're synthesizing information and having discussions about that through the technology that's been provided. On the number 2 to the upper right, the redefinition of the classroom now is a little bit, actually the modification. I'm going to go to the M. I see that I'm kind of going clockwise. Let's go to quadrant number 1. Students create a comic. If we're modifying our instruction, students, an example was students create a comic on global warming and are using digital cartoon creators. Now, this generation of students who we currently have in the pre-service teacher preparation program, again, they connect with Bitmojis, they have avatars, they've been in Second Life, they're experimenting in Minecraft, they're doing a variety of things already with avatars. And they can actually go into Web 2.0 tools and create their own digital comic strips. If you've ever tried it, it's really complicated. And you have to really understand the nomenclature of the digital environment to be able to recreate yourself in a digital format. We work with students today who are very capable of doing that. And then number 2, the quadrant to the upper right-hand corner is the redefinition of the classroom. And this really, if you're understanding a lot about Bloom's taxonomy and you're witnessing what happens when students are using higher order thinking skills, you can understand that the redefinition of the classroom occurs when students connect with each other. They're far apart. They're not within the 4 walls of our classroom. The classroom has become a global space for sharing information. And you're actually engaging at a different level and collaborating. Perhaps you're using a combination of tools that substitute, augment, and modify that learning space. This is the SAMR model. I have a variety of different graphics. I'm going to actually play a YouTube video and get to a space where we can share that with you.
This is the SAMR model in 120 seconds. The SAMR model is a framework that provides a lens for viewing technology integration in the classroom. The first level is substitution, or the idea that a block is a block no matter where it is or how you access it. This would be like using Google Docs as any other word processor. The new tech replaces the old tech, but it does not change the task. The next level is augmentation. At this level, the tech is still a substitute, but provides more functionality as students work to complete the same task. The ability to share your Google Doc in one click and the fact that it saves to the cloud automatically and provides you access from anywhere is an increase in functionality. The next level is modification. Here, the ball really gets rolling because the technology is used to redesign parts of the task and transform student learning. Students collaborating on one Google Doc and using the comment feature to provide instant feedback is an example of modification. The final level of SAMR is redefinition. At this level, we're able to design and create new tasks that were once unimaginable. By shifting our perspective from technology just being another block or substitute, we're able to truly start imagining the possibilities. An example of redefinition would be connecting to a classroom across the world through students sharing Google Docs. They would each write their own narrative of the same historical event, using the chat and comment section to discuss the differences. Then students would use the Voice Comments app to discuss the differences they noticed and embed this in their class website as a culture walk. To recap, substitution is the same task, new tech replaces old tech. Augmentation is the same task, but the tech increases functionality. Modification, we're able to redesign parts of the task. Redefinition, we're able to create new tasks once unimaginable. As we move from substitution to redefinition, we're moving from enhancing to transforming student learning.
And so that's just the 120-second plug. And again, we think about the way we deliver instruction. And I think that using a video like that that's been professionally created helps make it a little bit more accessible for everyone on a visual standpoint, rather than hearing me talk about that. The visual representation is very important. This next model really should be, and I think, Kate, I may have already shared that link with you about the SAMR model, or if you could post that in the chat room, that would be awesome. The first link should be the exemplar model here. So Punta Dora actually helped us understand a little bit more the exemplars of what the SAMR model has to offer. So in the 21st century learning environment, which we've now been in for 22 years or 21 years, again, some specifics about the attributes of the learning process that make the ubiquitous computing and one-to-one technologies very important part of the learning environment. And absolutely don't forget the quick initiative to equip students with computers, Chromebooks and iPads, and making content accessible digitally shifted the way in which we did teaching and learning through COVID. What lacked was the preparedness of materials to be able to make the students more interactive and hold them accountable for engaging with the content. And so that's, I would maintain that in this past 18 months, we've moved that agenda forward by 10 years, not 20. So we're midway through this concept of 21st century learning. In 20 years of being in the year 2000, we're halfway there. Now we're recognizing and doing our best to avoid going backwards and re-engaging students on a level that we did prior to COVID. So the SAMR model to me is a very important initiative. And I want to jump forward and really describe a little bit more about the M and the R. The modification of the classroom is, to me, where the rubber hits the road now that we're past the COVID piece. So I'm going to zip all the way through this models here and get to the bottom of my content. I feel like that model is really very large. It's still on the inside. My chat. Let me go. I want to go big. I want to go back. This is still inside the document. Here we go. There's my slider that I was looking for. And we'll make sure that you have links to this information for this document. I apologize about being behind the firewall here. Okay, another visualization about the SAMR model is the link that I think that Kate now has available, and that is Educational Technology and Mobile Learning. The SAMR model is further explained for teachers. The model that's showing down here below, this is the 120-second video that I just shared. So the links that are being put in the chat room will bring you back to that space. And then we have another visual representation of the model here. And this goes into further explanation about the trajectory of what happens in a classroom when you are modifying and redefining the space for the student interaction. And I just bring these to your attention very quickly because, again, accessibility of this information is really a priority for me. And no matter how much you read about it, it's always so much more beneficial to see different models to help lock in that understanding. Okay, back over to my course shell. There is another part of the model that is just, the visual representation of the SAMR model in action, as I call it. And this is the intersection of the pedagogy, the content, and the technology. It's also known as TPAC. But the interactive pedagogy wheel, I think I need to paste this in the chat room myself because perhaps this one was not shared prior. This is an interactive model. And I don't know if Kate is recognizing this. I see her head shaking, but I've postered this all over the ed building on site in our 5th floor and in our labs, because what we know is that this model shares a lot of the different thumbnails of the Web 2.0 tools that we've been using over time. And I feel like this puts us better in context with the tools and how they can be utilized and leveraged in our classroom. Many of these tools have become outdated, and I hate to say that, but what I'm working with the students on right now in the pre-service program is, the M and the R part of the wheel. And I'm going to back out just a little bit because you can't see the whole wheel. My hope is that on your own individual device, you've been able to QR code into this space or click the link that was shared. And let's just talk for a moment about the concentric circles. When you look at the substitution on the outer ring, you've got the outer gray ring narrating sections of the pie that represent substitution, augmentation, and I'm going around the wheel clockwise to modification and redefinition. And if you are just staring at this, you can become very mesmerized with all of the inner parts and the inner working of the circle. The Bloom's taxonomy elements that are apparent in the circle on the next ring, if you go in the very center of the ring, the green section of the pie is remembering, the teal section is understanding, the rose color section is application. I'll call that lilac is analyzing, and yellow is evaluating, and purple is creating. It's the M and the R sections. And so I'll call that the lilac, the yellow, and the purple sections that I'm focusing on with our pre-service teachers. We've all witnessed substitution and augmentation. We get that. This is what we had to do through COVID. Now, in their future classroom, their students will have also been using technology, substituting and augmenting. And now we're focusing on how can we engage them and hold them accountable for their learning and actually move them into a higher order thinking skill known as creativity. So yes, this is a lot of information to digest. And when I first show this to students, they're like, oh, cool. And they can click around and they can get to some of these icons. But I wondered from them exactly what it is they do and how they can engage. I'm going to stop for just a moment and address any questions that there may be. Are we seeing anything in the chat other than our own URLs? Okay, fantastic. So let me back myself into the share again and get to my tabs. this is, and I think, Kate, if you would paste this URL into the chat room for me, that would be awesome. What I used to engage the students with the wheel. This is what I call how to use SAMR. And the hyperdoc was created. And if you do get this URL, you could simply make a copy of this for yourself to use. And this is what I instructed the students to do. They did a file, make a copy, and they could actually pick a folder in their Google Drive, and all of them have a Google Drive that they can use to share this document, and they can actually push that in there. And I did that as well. And so when I click OK, I have a new copy of this to use myself. The template remains intact. And now, as you can see in my upper left corner, I've got a copy, and that can be just renamed. And what I ask the students to do is put their name on it. So as they engage, this is kind of the 5 E's approach, right? I first of all want them to have fun. I want them to play with the tools. I want them to engage with different tools to kind of experience what they never saw in context with regard to Bloom's taxonomy. And as they engage and explore, here they can see the model that I've just shared with you. That is the SAMR model, another visual representation. They can hyperlink over to that, further digest examples of how the model can be operationalized. I'm a little bit slow connection, so maybe that's going to pause for you. And as I tab back over on my tabs, they can also then, again, get back to that same model and explore the modification and redefinition elements of the model, of the SAMR model itself. The hook here for explaining the importance of understanding this model comes with this part here in ubiquitous computing. As I work with the students and I use language that they're recognizing but not knowing it has terms, it clearly describes for them ubiquitous computing, which is what they're doing. They're using their phone, their iPads, their Chromebooks, their laptops. They're constantly engaging with technology to remain informed. My goal is to help them organize their thinking through all of the ADHD that we now are experiencing with our notifications and with our Apple Watches and with our just the regular day-to-day use of computers has become more prevalent. And so by explaining this, they understand that this is the future of their classroom as well. They're going to have 25 to 30 little minds all over the place, not only on the internet, but also being triggered with each other and triggered through your instructional cues. It's impossible, truly impossible, to lock in all their minds at the same time on the same topic unless you have a way for them to engage and interact with the material. So what I asked them to do is to actually explore this list of curated resources that we've collaborated from over semesters of working with students. And the tools among the following collection, we call it the 5 minutes of cool. I asked the students just to pick two tools to idealize their uses for teaching and learning. And think of the examples that they would use those tools on the modified learning environment or on the redefined learning environment. Now they were sitting at tables, and so they thought that of the 7 people at each table, 6 or 7 at the team, they thought it was up to the team to pick 2 tools. So I really had to clarify for them, each student pick 2 tools, work with each other so that the table itself represents at least 10 to 12 tools. I didn't want to see just Desmos and Kahoot throughout the assessment part for myself. I wanted to see it changed up. And let me go back to this 5 minutes of cool, because when I think about, what am I going to teach in the tech integration course this semester? This is just a small sampling of tools that are available for integration. Now you can click on that link. I think that link is available through that hyperdoc. But here's the tools. And we've actually had students prepare presentations of the tool, just a 5-minute quick shot of what is that tool? Many of the presentations are loaded here as well, just to kind of give a little background and perspective. But as I wanted the students to see this list, earlier in the semester already, I surveyed them on this very list and asked them, how many of you have used or not used this particular set of tools? So I thought that was also very telling. Still aggregating the data on that, but it is apparent to me that it would be impossible to try and sit down and point and click and show students how to use every one of these tools. And so my point being, let's spread this out and share with each other. And the results of this really in the modified learning environment, the explanations that I received from the students, they really wanted to explain to me what the tool is, almost like they copy pasted from the website, the advertise, the hook to get people to use the tool. So this was informative for me as an instructor to say, they're still just taking information and putting it in to fill in a blank. What I really needed to know was their perspective on how to modify and how to redefine. And so for the rest of the semester, that's where our focus will be. Sharing out at the end, students were able to literally make a copy. I showed you how to make a copy, but they were able to download this into a Word document and push it into the assignment link in Canvas for me to reevaluate at a later time. I also asked them if they wanted to, they could share the URL for me. And that way they could copy paste the URL into Canvas as well. This reflective piece gave the students time to think about the substitution and augmentation and how that really has shifted into the modification and redefinition aspect of the SAMR model. And applying different tools was an important part of this as well, because for them, it was eye-opening. Like they really understood that there were tools that could be used, but what they didn't understand was their role as a teaching facilitator and how they would hold students accountable for the use of those tools. Now, as educators, we're all over the place. What tool is the best? What tool will the students be able to use? How do I keep them on task? And this is across the spectrum of K-12 education. And I'm seeing that now with our juniors, because we're getting ready to put them in the field. At the time that they were in high school, it wasn't ubiquitous computing like we know it today. And so they may come into a surprise where they find, oh my goodness, every student has a laptop. This is not what I'm learning about becoming a teacher, but now they are, because we recognize that shift. And they are going to see tools they've never seen before. They're going to engage with students at a level, microscopic learning level, like unpacking learning in small bits and pieces, because just one small stumbling block for a student can hold them up for the rest of the 40 minutes that you have them. So that's our goal. Figure out where they are, help them move forward, empower them to take responsibility, and let them know that we're also not just holding them accountable, but we know that they're moving forward, or we know that they're not moving forward. And so this is how I've been leveraging tools. I'm going to stop at that point and engage. Any conversation, any questions? Are we finding any in the chat?
I don't see any now, but I welcome people to either unmute or jump into the chat if you've got a question.
Okay, moving on. I think there may be another link that I'm very interested in exposing you to, not just with the SAMR model, but also the effort of an administrator who I really value input. Let's see if this is the one. Yes, it is. And actually, I'm just going to take this one, Kate, and I'll copy paste it into the chat room and then share my screen again. This one is a set of resources that were developed. It's called the Engaging Tools for Educators, if I'm not mistaken. Oops, let me get to my place where I'm going to share my screen. We tend to think about all of the possible tools and where to go and what to do with them and how they can be used. So this compilation was created. It's called Tech Tools for Engagement. And if we look at this list in a linear fashion, we'll be very overwhelmed in trying to think about what to do first. So ISTE, the International Society for Technology and Education, really has the view of using the standards in a way and using technology in a way. It's not the how-to technology anymore. It's why would I use that technology? And the Tech Tools for Engagement list here really kind of sheds light on ways to use the technology and the tools that are fitting in these categories. And once again, COVID changed a lot. So in my mind, I'm already imagining and I already recognize this isn't an all-inclusive list. It's a great foundation to work with though. So tech terms like back channeling, collaboration, web organizers, or content curators, capturing tools, storytelling, word clouds, that you can see the list goes on. We do get into some curriculum-based tools. And you could be an educator who's on the internet all the time and collecting resources and seeing great uses of tools, but still never be able to concretely put them in categories like this list has done. And so this is one of the really great takeaways that I'd like to share with you. Not only do we have that great giant SAMR wheel and iPedagogy wheel, but we have this tech tools for engagement, which is very hyperlinking and useful across the curriculum. I'm not going to say that it's just math tools or it's social studies tools. It's interrelated. And many of these you've heard of. Kahoot for sure is our interactive formative assessment tool that students just love to engage. These are all very clickable links, and I just want to be sure that I show you around, and I know we're not going to have time for everyone to engage in every tool, but this is my task this semester and moving forward with engaging our students with the toys, the tools, and the potential uses in their future classrooms, which to me is really just invaluable time for them. The content itself is not, it's evolving, but the use and the models that we use for preparing our future teachers has evolved. And it isn't just we're going to point and click and show them tools, we're going to get them using tools. And by the end of the semester, I'm challenging the students themselves to teach me something, especially math. And that's when I will know that they've really been embracing the content and engaging and learning. I also have to emphasize for the students that they are themselves going to be modeling lifelong learning practices. And it is apparent to me, those who've been very proficient with the use of the ubiquitous computing style, and they've learned to manage their ADHD. And those students who are already, have come to me and said, Dr. Goedde, look, I'm already falling behind. I'm not a tech savvy user, but that gives me an opportunity to be vulnerable with them and say, neither am I, and help them understand how it's a process, that you're not just all of a sudden going to adapt one tool. Your materials are not all of a sudden going to be engaging in Canvas, and that you need to engage your students to learn how to best manage that. And when you practice that, that's when you get better at the SAMR model and ubiquitous computing.
We do have a couple of comments
yes.
here.
Please
first,
go.
Some appreciation just for your modeling of good teaching and circling back for questions. Folks appreciate that. And appreciation for the SAMR model, that it's a progression. I don't have to jump directly to the R level if I'm new to these technologies. That's the comment.
Thank you very much. That's exactly the point. We're not evaluating our use of technology based on whether it's a substitution or a redefinition. It's a combination of the tools. And I myself have been engaging in the SAMR model and clicking on some of these tools, wondering what they can do. And many of them are no longer available. This is the vast change that we're amongst right now. I mean, preparing teachers for their future classroom, we have a 3-year lead time. What we teach them as freshmen and engage with in their methods courses may only have a shelf life of about 6 months. So we need to engage them with the categories and the language that is, okay, what is back channeling and why would I use that? Or what is an LMS? Or what is a PLN? Or what is and so you can see the momentum. I imagine probably in 5 years, if I put on my futuristic hat, we're going to be really working with students who have been engaged with artificial intelligence and machine learning, robotics for sure. And our future teachers in STEM and STEAM, we're really bracing ourselves for that change as well. Hopefully we get to see some of those really great students who had those experiences in their learning. But again, the divide isn't getting any smaller. The students who have access to these materials come from teachers who also have access to these materials and the knowledge base to incorporate the materials. And so I don't know if I shared with you, the session I attended earlier this morning was just so engaging and so alive with what we can do to prepare teachers across the board, not just K through 12, but engage the models through K through 16 and the higher education practice as well, kind of closing the circle. Where do we begin preparing the teachers? And so that's kind of really heavy on my mind right now, but certainly sharing the SAMR model is one way to visualize how tools can be used, and keep our students engaged with tools as well. We have to empower them and let them play. I want to be sure that I've shared all of my links, and I'm going to lean on Kate. Did I use all 4 links that I shared with you earlier?
I think there was one.
One left?
There was one that linked to a blog.
Oh, yes. Could you push that one out for me, please?
Yeah.
I'll just quickly share with the participants. The reason why I actually included that as a part of the presentation. As I mentioned, I didn't prepare a slideshow anticipating these links. Okay, so if we take a look at that last link, this again, this is just something I just really love, and I started working with this week just to as an example of the power of technology. And I think many of you have maybe heard of these before. Again, referring back to Dr. Scheininger in his role as a principal, professional development for teachers really has shifted as well, because all of a sudden teachers needed resources and they need to be able to do things differently. Choice boards became prevalent, not just through COVID, but pre-COVID times. We were actually engaging students with slides that were interactive. And this one here is a tic-tac-toe board. And the choice board leverages a variety of things that students can engage. Certainly some of the foundational and philosophical underpinnings about student engagement and holding students accountable, leveraging the practices. The choice boards templates here, this link will open up a whole nother set of colorful blocks of tiles, and you can make this your own. I've used these tiles myself. You can certainly make a copy for your own use and pick one or many of these choice boards. But if I go back to the presentation, the choice board that I was emphasizing here has to do with the digital pedagogy and tasks that our teachers in service can engage to also learn a little bit more about technology integration practices for one, and blended learning and personalized learning, all of the buzzwords that integrate technology. But I thought this was also an important element of recognizing as you empower students for their learning and leverage technology, you can give the students choices and still hold them accountable. And what I'm doing right now with the students is we're looking at choice boards, and I've prepared 9, it's a 3x3. So I put in 9 elements of the Danielson model to help them understand aspects of the professional learning experience, classroom management, and so on, that videos have been produced for their learning. Further down, now that I've built the foundation for the Danielson model, they're going to engage deeper into picking a model and then picking a content area and creating a choice board on a content area specific to their preparation. And then, like I said, I want them to teach me something and show me what they know about their content through a choice board and give me the opportunity to pick and engage with their materials. So hopefully that's a really great practice for them. And they get to play and stumble. I think it's important for them to make mistakes now, give them the opportunity to just have some feedback from each other and from myself, and make that classroom come alive with their own professional materials. Digital content to me is where I have to be sure that they're prepared, that they can bring a portfolio of things to their experience that they've already done and see how it might fit in with the classrooms that they're going to be in, and then work on it a little bit more. It's a constructive practice. So keep them working on it, keep them using tools of today, and engage their learning. The accountability part, boy, they're so motivated. They really are excited to just see what they can do. And I don't have to take attendance. It's just been wonderful. So next week it's going to be, they're engaging online 100%. And they recognize that their timestamp, date stamp, everything is there for me. We're starting to talk about digital citizenship and time online. And so that really, again, makes a strong segue into the accountability part and assessment part of their practice. Being
we have-
mindful of time. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we have just a few minutes left. So wanted to open it up in case anyone has any more questions, any more thoughts or comments they'd like to share.
Hello. I'd like to just ask that I'm now student teaching, and I took that tech course that not with you, but I think with Mark earlier. So I'm just thinking that how much balance we could bring in adding technology and just manual teaching in in a 45 minutes class period.
So your question is how do I leverage that? Or how do I find balance?
Yes.
I use an active learning strategy where I really have the students engaging with their mobile devices and with their laptops. They're engaging with the technology and producing their ideas. My classroom has 8 conference room tables, and each table has a monitor. And my role is to facilitate the content. So in person, I have a lapel mic, and I leave it off most of the time until I need to click it on and say, let's all circle back, let's all revisit, and I keep them on focus. So I'm really facilitating the room and keeping them on task that way. It's the best way I can balance in 45-minute time. And they get so much done. And the share out period is the formative assessment part for me, because not only do they push their material back into the Canvas shell, they raise their hand and say, hey, look, I want to show you something. Or, hey, look, I had a little technical trouble there. Can you help me with that? And in many cases, I'll say, how many of you had the same trouble? And then I'll see 5 or 6 students. And so it's really, it's a collective balance there.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Goedde. And I'm also wondering that how much balance I need according to grade levels, say grade 5 kids versus grade 8 kids. So will it be different?
Yeah, it's going to be customized. It's going to be individualized. It's going to be also your preference and comfort level with empowering the students. You know, you can kind of be triggered and figure out when the room is out of control and then bring them back together. And that can happen in as short as 5 minutes. So, you know, I have a breakout of an active learning classroom, like the first 5 minutes in, introduction and reminder of where they were left off from the previous class period. And then there's a 15-minute content section. And then there's a 10-minute interaction section. You can kind of idealize how that 45 minutes plays out, but you've got to be in tune with where the students are as well. And so if in the first 10 minutes they are clueless and you need to rethink the instructional practice based on their interaction, that's where the technology helps the most. The formative assessment practice, I lean on that quite a bit.
Yeah, and I believe this all comes with practice, experience.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
We have a couple more questions here. People thanking you for the resources and looking forward to sharing them with co-teachers and wondering, once we're out of the chat, can we still access some of this? Should we go make copies like you encourage your students to do?
That's a really great question. I apologize. I will try my best to prepare like a Cliff Notes, a cheat sheet with the URLs that we used today. If you used your tabs in your browser, the URLs, once you click into them and they open the screen on your browser, you should be able to maintain those URLs and then curate them locally on your computer. Right now, maybe you make up a Google Doc and copy paste those that are currently in your browser as we went through the session today. The chat will go away, but I will have those URLs and I can certainly share them back out to Project Impact as a follow-up.
And I do think you'll get a follow-up message of some kind from Project Impact. So
yes.
Fantastic. I see one more question. How would you suggest an educator continue to keep up with the ever-changing tech as we move into the future?
Yeah, I wish I had that golden answer myself, because I struggle as well. I try to curate as many resources. I get in circles where conversations are happening. I follow some personalized learning networks, and I practice and I click and I make mistakes and I lose things, and then I get frustrated. So I'm right there with you and understand that the learning curve is very, very steep for technology integration. And we're in a practice where we have to constantly update our practices. So having conversations with your colleagues, working with the tools, practicing, engaging your students. I learned so much from my students because they're genius. They're so creative and they move so fast. So I just encourage you, we're all, I probably have 10 more years in my career and you may be too. So we'll see a lot of change and we just have to do our best to curate our resources and collaborate with others.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It looks like we are just about out of time. Please join me in thanking Dr. Goedde for sharing her time and expertise. We're so grateful for teaching us about the SAMR model this morning. So this is our second breakout session. We're just wrapping up. If you would like, there is a central room to go back to just kind of debrief a little bit about what some of the sessions have been, and that you do have to close out of this meeting and hop back into that main room. I'm going to try to post that link. We'll see how successful it is. But I hope to see you back there in a few moments. And thank you again for joining us at this conference today. So.